Welcome to the Dad Level Podcast. This is episode 6, part 2 of our discussion about RPG memories. We hope you enjoy. Thanks.
About Warhammer, and he's like, "Well, what's the most inexpensive, set to collect?" Because he says, "I'd like to try it, but it's really so expensive." And I'm willing to go out and get what he wants, but he's at that point of discovery right now where do I want to go with this grouping? Do I want to go with this? Things like that. So it's opening a lot of doors, and it's bringing back a lot of memories. And believe it or not, that worked. One of the last discussions was this morning. And I said, it's funny you asked me about that because I'm doing this thing tonight. And so, I'm trying to, my mindset is actually getting back into that because we never really did Warhammer.
No.
Oh, we never, no.
Yeah,
but we didn't, but Ember and them did. And Josh got into it, and they played Warhammer, and Ben and all those guys.
No, we were trying to get Battletech.
Yes.
We bought the miniatures, we bought the grid. We actually think we played maybe once.
Yeah, because I remember we tried it, and we were just like, no. Because one thing required another thing to actually play the game, and it got convoluted for us.
Yeah.
And we were always pen, pencil, paper, dice, let's do this. And Warhammer always required a little miniature or those little hexagonal pieces.
I remember, I was going to say the hexagonal grid, the layout, which was the grid, battle grid.
And then some of the ones that required you to link all the little hexagons together to make the little map. And if you did something wrong, the map split apart because it was just next to each other. And we were like, no, this is not going to work. And those things drove me. That's a bad experience right there.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. Little hexagonal, stupid little, you want to chuck them in the window, God.
And then I remember us sometimes building dioramas for
that
the
was
gameplay.
fun. That was fun.
And that was back before you got to buy those. They didn't have them.
Yes.
So you'd buy a model or you'd buy a stand that came with something else and you'd modify it to make it look. And I remember when I turned the Well of Souls from Indiana Jones to a jungle temple where they were going to sacrifice somebody. And we had all the little miniatures.
Right. Hey, Vince, if you're ever down in Houston again, go get Benny and go to Dad's. Because he's still doing dioramas to this day.
Nice.
Man, I remember that Star Wars diorama he built. Man, that was so great.
Time out. Mark, what are you doing?
I decided to go to the beach.
He's on
He's
a
in
beach.
Hawaii all of a sudden.
He just teleported to the beach.
Tried doing that, and I ended up with a prison background and this big guy breathing over me. I was like, nope, I'm going back.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of like really good board games right now that I've been kickstarting and stuff, and like I'm waiting for the time that all this is done so we can get together and play. Especially like the Aliens board game I just picked up. That
Didn't that come out?
that one, and I have a Resident Evil 2 one that I have, and Resident Evil 3, so it's like zombies. I just did Kickstarter for the Zombicide, but it's a Western, so it's cowboys versus zombies.
And aren't they doing a new one with all the different transformations? Yeah.
Get it. I haven't.
Hey, Vince, quick aside, what was the old West game that was from TSR?
Oh, you would ask that. I don't remember, but I remember the cover of it.
It was like Boot Hill.
Boot Hill, yeah.
Boot Hill.
Was it Boot Hill? It was.
Yeah,
I think it was Boot Hill. Yeah.
It was a very short-lived series.
Well, there were so many of them that came out with one box set. It was great, but then nothing went into it. They didn't build anything else, add to it.
It had one module afterwards, and it was done. And I just remembered that had so much potential.
Well, you know what? While we're talking about that, and we were saying things that kind of hacked us off or we didn't like about a game or it took you out. This whole idea of now everybody wanting their experience points the minute they accomplish something.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of, it was always in our time at
Reward.
the end of the campaign, everybody
Yes.
got it, and then between campaigns, that's when you went into the guy who was GMing and said, "Hey, I want to go buy this, and I want to do this," and in that way, once you started playing again, you had everything that you would need to start the game, and everything else would be found in the game.
Right. That's what we did between games. When we
Yep.
weren't able to get through a campaign in quicker time than we were hoping, we would
Yep.
have downtime, but we would still be game oriented. That's when he would award the points. And
Yep.
we would say, okay, now let's roll for new stuff. Let's resupply.
And then you had to expend the experience points, and dropped it, and then you had to get it back. That was another thing that's kind of changed in the way people play now. They all want the instant gratification of what you get from like a video game. They want to bring into a role-playing game, which is really not the same.
No.
Right.
I want to start this next topic on favorite like event, something that happened that like one of your characters did that stood out and is with you to this day. Like for me was when we did the Infinity War, and the fact that I think that game was the game Lightning built his armor, but it was also the game I think that it should have been the game that we had all died, but Lightning, and then he got the time stone, went back to the past, warned us so we could fix it. So there's two of him running around the entire universe who saved everything.
I think I remember that.
You should. There's an Enigma dog floating around in deep space somewhere because of that game.
That's all right. I think Colin turned me into a worm once.
Okay, yeah, I remember that now.
Oh, I don't know. I got to think my favorite moment was when we played. I decided to do a Resident Evil based on Marvel, and we did it all in that big no, it was an office building, so it had elements of like Die Hard, Resident Evil, a spy movie. We even began it with the fight with the helicopters and people jumping back and forth and fighting. One of the guys in the helicopter turned into a zombie, and we were fighting. That helicopter was going to crash into a building, and so you were as Enigma. No, that was later.
He was a cop.
Because when Enigma showed up at the beginning of that was when he drove the car into the parking garage in the basement and spent half the game trying to get out of the parking garage because he kept making horrible rolls. And then we meet up when the elevator opens and they almost shot you because you're walking out and they were like, it's a zombie, bam, bam, bam. And you had kind of like teleported and came back and like, it's me. And then Richard spent the whole game running around with a zombie head with the pistol sticking out its mouth through the whole game. And it was just that perfect humor, seriousness, and when a game all comes together. I would have loved to have seen that as a movie. And everybody was satisfied at the end of the game. It wasn't one of those where, I wish we'd have done something different, but that I think was one of my highlights of playing when a game really works.
One of my highlights was I actually was in a gaming group, I don't know, like 10 years ago up here. A friend of mine, Howard, who has since passed away, started his own, he created his own gaming system and everything from the ground up. And my character was a female who could control little fire demons. And we were attacked by this group, and I was able to summon fire demons, and they would look like little cartoon characters. So the whole bunch of them were leaping out, they were attacking the stuff. And it just got to be so crazy that Howard, as the DM, said, listen, all right, he had the main villain go, all right, you know what? I'll stop this if I can take one of the women and have my way with it. And because I was the female character in the group, I said, fine, I'll take one for the team. And then I proceeded to describe in great detail what he was doing to me. And then I had the whole room, there was like 8 of us. And then I went on for like 10 minutes describing in great detail. And And I mean, literally, people falling all over each other. It just because I like, you know what? Why not? Because why? Why? Because I grew up with some really crazy people.
Colin missed his opportunity to become a romance novelist.
Hey, just like Rory.
You know, I got to take something back. I think my favorite was the first time we ever used our own characters. When Firehawk turned into a flaming bird. When Nathan and Kevin were one person and he had the ability to shrink and grow. He was a super genius. He was like a Hank Pym type character.
Yeah, Raymond Palmer, yeah.
Yeah. That game, Gene played with us, remember?
Yes.
That was one of the last times I got to play a game with my brother. Because he went off and did when he went to Piney Point and stuff. And there was something about playing something your own character that you created that was, you know,
Absolutely.
was you, and you weren't pretending to be Captain America or Superman or somebody else's character. You played you, and I think that was my favorite because it started so much for us as the threat and our characters.
Absolutely, that was one of the times where we were just like, you know what, we could really make this something. We use the rules, but we use our own people.
Yeah.
And that's where, you're right, I think that was where it started.
What about you, son?
I already said mine.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Come on, give us another one. Come on.
My favorite was when I was playing with the character Enforcer, who had a danger sense that was tied to teleportation. So whenever his danger sense would go off, he would automatically teleport to wherever that danger
was.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember. Is this the alley? Are you going to do the one that happened in the alley?
So Vince, I don't remember why, but he decided that the character was in the shower and had a bar of soap in his hand and teleported. So he was completely naked in an alley with, I don't know, 3 or 4 guys, I think. So I decided that the only thing that I could do was throw the bar of soap at him, and every single roll nailed a guy. So it was Captain America sequence, but with the naked dude in soap.
Bar of soap. Oh, I remember that. And it was that led to us developing the discs. Remember the throwing discs?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And then some of those, didn't he have, well, before 8-Ball became a character, I know we had a character who could throw things, and he had a proficiency at throwing. And
Enigma at one point had discs that he used to throw.
Yes. And I mean,
and
you could see where some of those things went to. He had the what they were like, the circle things, right? What did they look like, Colin? I'm sorry.
I think they were disc shaped. You know, I've still got the technical drawings for all that.
Bet you do.
Hey, those could actually. I went back and looked at those a couple of years back, and I'm like, wow, that actually could be a thing.
You were army building back before there was even such a thing. I remember you created that the robots that had 2 arms. You had the robots that then you did it before Snake Eyes ever existed, but they had that similar shape of a Snake Eyes, the original mask.
That was Genesis. That was the female character. That was in Batch.
And I was like, when you see those designs later on in somebody else's work, you're like, well, you know, I think there's this collective consciousness that creative people tap into. That's why you see 4 or 5 things happening with the same feel to it, but in different areas and in different groups.
Yeah, you see it like in movies and stuff occasionally too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
For somebody who's on a beach, a sunny beach, you don't look happy. Do you just get the bill?
Yeah.
you know.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
You need one of these superimposed, man.
I don't think that's on the list.
You know what I saw the other day? Speaking of what you're doing there with your palm tree, now you can buy your own green screen setup.
Oh yeah,
Comes with the camera, the gloves, the everything. I was like, wow, what could we have done with that in the day?
Oh, no kidding. Oh. Believe me, if I could hand myself the stuff that I have now,
right?
I mean, if I could take even pictures of where I am currently sitting in my studio here, and go back and give it to myself back when we were doing this gaming stuff, our lives would be whoa.
Well, you know what I'm thinking, that if I had, if I could go travel back in time, I'm the guy who stole all of my old collectibles that are really expensive now.
Yeah.
I stole them from myself. Oh, you're too stupid to have those right now.
I've had dreams of doing that too. Going back and thinking, okay, well, that disappeared. What? Maybe I hit, you know.
My Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, what was his first appearance? 14 Amazing Stories, or what it was, Astonishing Stories, or something like that.
Fantasy 15.
Yes. Was it 15 or 14? Because I had that. I had the second issue of Fantastic Four. Because remember, my uncle in New Orleans gave me a bunch of his old stuff because he introduced me to comics. He was the person who ruined me for life because he handed me a damn comic book. But I love him, and I'm thankful he did it, because I wouldn't have traded anything that we've done for it, you know, because each little element led us to meet each other and become a family, and all the stuff we've done together.
Yep.
And now we're ruining other generations.
All right. Earlier today, me and my youngest boys, Travis and Patrick, Travis is like, listen, I'm just trying to do things normally. I said, man, normal hasn't worked for our family for a long time. Stop trying to be normal. I said, normal don't work for us. And Patrick,
normal's overrated.
Right. And normal, just get it.
Well, you know, normal is our normal because it's normal to us.
Yeah, it's not the not normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were geeks and nerds before it was popular.
That's right. I mean, and so much, and like you said, few times we've done so much stuff that was ahead of the curve that we look back now at stuff that's, you know, we look at stuff now, we're like, wait a minute, we did that. You know, even Randy on occasion has texted me and said, man, I'm seeing stuff that you were doing, you know, he's like, you were doing this stuff 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, one time he texted me about Jim Carrey. Okay, he says, so I'm watching Ace Ventura and Jim Carrey's talking out of his ass. I said, yeah. He says, man, you were doing that back in high school. What the hell?
Yep. And the zipper thing.
And
is my zipper open?
The car.
That man, you were like
a callback right there.
I tell you what, the most embarrassing zipper story is when you realize you've gone through an entire service in church and come home and your zipper's down.
Oh yeah, or you've gotten up in front of a crowd and we're talking, and they're all like smiling at you, and you're smiling back, and you're like, I'm really doing good here.
I'm killing it.
I'm killing it, and one of the guys up there with you goes, your zipper's down, and then you don't even want to look at the crowd. You know, was the table in the way? You know, did they see anything? Yeah, those embarrassing moments.
And back in our day, we had XYZ. You know, XYZ, man. Today, no, it's all. Let me get that up on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the worst thing ever invented was a camera on a phone.
Yeah.
I'm just joking, because I think it's actually the best thing.
You're right. You're kind of right. I mean, it's a double-edged sword on that.
Yeah. But you know, the one thing is, if we had these back then, we could have been like recording so much stuff.
Oh yeah, I'd have had my own video collection at home of movies that hadn't come out yet.
If I could go back in time and take all the toys for myself, I would rip them out of my hand right as I got them, so that way never got opened.
I think Mark's experiencing an earthquake there.
It's a tidal wave, I believe. It's kind of going out and it's going to come back in. This is big. That would be cool. We just see this big wave come over and wash over Mark. That's really good special effects.
Water.
Affected through the 2004 tsunami, and all of a sudden he's gone.
Or worse yet, the whole let's do deep sea. He's sitting there talking, and a giant shark comes up and just eats him. Man, I hated that in the movie. My son and his friend knew it was coming.
Oh yeah, we got it.
Sitting there, and I was all into Samuel L. Jackson's speech, and I'm like, why is? And they're both like looking at me because they're waiting for that moment to happen, and they're just waiting, and I'm like, what? Oh! And then boom, I was like, I thought he was the star. Wow! You know, I was just blown away that happened in a movie.
Yeah.
I can think of a few other movies that should have been in. You know, where even like in a big tower building where the guy's talking and we're going to get these people out of this fire. We're going to get them down to the. I never would have saw that coming.
Just a tentacle comes in and grabs him and carries him off.
But so let's last thing I wanted to talk about, and we can just kind of branch this in, and then we can. I plan on trying to do this is like getting you guys on to talk about old times. Besides what I'm doing with my friends, so it's not like just my stuff. It's like also what I. But the fact that our characters, you know, you guys are working trying to get into a comic and have been trying for a little while.
And, a little while. 20 years.
Well, it kind of started because we ended up taking the group and we started creating our own villains and then just slowly rolled them out into their own universe so that they didn't exist in the Marvel universe anymore. So that's kind of where it started, and then we just used the same backstory that we had and rolled it over into comic books. Every single one of the characters has been modified a little bit to make them fit into the world a little bit better.
And each iteration through time, they kind of changed to be with a little bit more of the time that we were in.
Right.
You know? So the one thing we always did was try to allow them to evolve, you know, to change and to bring in, because, you know, one thing that really works is if you bring in what's going on in the world into your stories, then you can tell more believable stories. You know, I go back to Gene Roddenberry. You can talk about things that nobody wants to talk about if you wrap it up in science fiction or fantasy or something else. Right. We were, you know, we did start off as just being heroes, superheroes, but we saw the potential for these characters. You know, like to take Alterator, age him, keeping his backstory from what Colin created, and then seeing where he would be 40 years down the road.
Right. Which was what I tried to do in the bad script. You guys took that. You guys took that and really developed that, which was something I was really sad to be not to be a part of because it was such a great development.
And we had other people there. What was the one guy that we hung out with, and he created 4 characters. I'm not talking William. I cannot remember his name, but I still have pictures that he designed for characters.
Was that the guy?
And remember, what was it?
The guy who created Warriors, a Wolverine type thing, where he actually had the 2 claws like Dakin.
No, that was somebody else. I remember who you were talking about. Yeah, no, all his were. He was really wanting to do ethnic type characters.
Okay,
so he was. Who was it?
After me.
Yeah, and he wanted to do like a Hispanic person, an Indian person, a black hero, and it was those elements that really, when we separated out my one character into Nathan, and who became Nathan and Kevin, was because of the character, what I was seeing, what he was doing, because I still have a script he gave me of one of the books he wanted to do, and then William created stories. We had all these people who loved our universe, and at the early stages were creating their own stories within our universe.
Yeah.
Now the universe had changed a little bit from where we started out, but there were a lot of people who wanted to be involved in what was going on.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know I wanted to be involved, but you guys were already down this one set road and everything. And I remember Vince coming to me a couple times and said, "Listen, if you come up with a story, we can break up into parts, we'll put it at the back of the book." And I just couldn't come up with anything that competed with what you guys had going on because it was so different.
Well, but the idea of that we were going to build a world, a universe, I enjoyed that idea of different elements, and plus we explored different characters within that world, but in different times.
Right.
And and
that's what inspired me to do the whole history behind Badge, where I made Bandolier his father, and then I had their father, and I had Bandelier's father be the occult detective. That was what inspired that, was the fact that you guys were exploring other variations of everything to make the bigger story.
Right.
Well, and because you think about a world that has just become devastated, right? And not every region felt the same way or experienced it or had the same outcomes. Some places thrived where others didn't. You have where we had Vince was creating a character that could have fit in there, and then I was running with an idea of of doing a homage to the Magnificent Seven.
Okay.
But based in there was an anime I love, a manga, and it was an anime, and it was that these characters, they didn't finish what they started, so they keep being reborn and attempting to do it and keep failing. And I was like, well, what if you took that and you took and this is going to get broadcast and somebody's going to steal my idea. You take
right now
seven samurai, and then you end it where that is.
Okay.
Then you jump to the Western era, and those are the same characters reborn in the Western. And then you jump to, like, say, another story that there's had like 7 people that fight against something, and half of them, all of them die. And then what happens when it all culminates in our future? And I would have had a story that was something going on that was in our time, but in a different area.
Okay.
But through flashbacks and memories, we were seeing this other story being told out that showed that it spanned generations.
Right.
And then they finally find out why they were constantly being reborn and who that person was. And it was a particular person that had to be destroyed I'm not going to give too many details, but they eventually were going to be able to accomplish that, survive, and then try to figure out what you do now. What happens when you finish something that is, something decades old or generations old, and you accomplish it, and how do you fit into the new world? And then that could have been their kickoff point to maybe interacting with us or going off and exploring different parts of our world. We wanted to make the world of the threat bigger than what we were seeing in just the city of Houston.
Right.
We talked about Japan, and we talked about all that other stuff. I really think it could be an immersive world if, we could ever get it together and get it off the ground. And I'm always been a big fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs. And if you think about Tarzan, you think about the Capac series, you think about Pellucidar, John Carter, Carson of Venus,
Tarzan.
They all have one connective tissue, and that is Tarzan went to all of those environments. I think he didn't go to Venus, but Edgar Rice Burroughs himself in the books is being told those stories by the characters that it happens to. You know, and that was one element I love that they got into the movie, that he was his nephew, and that, you know, the books that he wrote were being dictated to him by John Carter. But that's the first cinematic universe.
Yes.
You know, it started in the books, but you could have built a cinematic universe around it because they were all interconnected.
Right.
You know? So that at an early age was
all the possibilities that we could have, you know, we can come up with. It's just a matter of getting it popular enough that people want to consume.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was telling Vince that right now it's not conducive because we're not done with the pandemic.
Or at least
But once cons can come back and you can start getting people together and doing that thing, then you can start building a momentum again.
Right.
And then maybe we can get to a point where we can think about, getting our stuff back in line and getting it out. Because I still believe it is it's the best comic that people don't know about, because everybody else is doing the same stuff now that we were doing back then. So,
and sadly,
it's popular.
The stuff that's out there now is rehash, and the originality is going away. I mean, the most original thing that I've read lately is Three Jokers, and that's
yeah. See, I don't read much of the mainstream comics anymore. I've just been so disappointed and heartbroken. I love some of the independent comics that people do, because they go in places that the mainstream comics won't dare to go.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea of fake diversity. Diversity is creating a character, growing that character, whether it's a minority, a female, or whatever you want to do with it, and building a life around it, instead of going and trying to take an existing IP and just re-image it. It's like a skin like you find in a video game. That's not diversity. We need to promote more female writers and different types of media and different types of books. Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's what I believe that Stratum Comics will do, and I've been proud of where Mark has taken it.
Yeah, I would absolutely climb on board if I had something that I could contribute, because you guys have got such a thing going on that in order for me to feel like I could bring something to the table, I would have to go back 20 years to create, 25 years to that creative process we all had together.
Right.
I just don't know if I have that right now. So I sit back and I watch what you guys do, and I'm like, this is great, because Mark sent me all the scripts for all the comics, and I read through them, and I'm like, wow, this is great stuff. You know, and it saddens me that not more people know about it.
Right. Yeah, I love where it's going. I mean, this new guy is doing a lot of painted style artwork instead of just your normal pencil lines. He's really painting every page. It's gonna look really good, and I'm
really
excited to see what's going on.
How is he? Is he gotten better? Because wasn't he sick for a while?
Yeah, he's doing all right now. I checked with him yesterday, and he said he's got one page of 28 or issue 1 to do. So, but yeah, he seems to be doing okay. I check in with him every once in a while. He thought he was going to end up being able to get his transplants a couple of weeks ago, and it fell through. So
he's still on a waiting list.
Yeah, he's still on the waiting list.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that was not where you wanted this to go, Vince, was it?
No, but hey, the thing is that
it's all part and parcel to what goes on behind the scenes.
It is the situation we're in right now.
And one thing I really like about role playing in general kind of goes back to what Colin was saying earlier, where you'd roll up a character and you get 5 powers and you get these weird random combinations. And I think one of the great things about role playing and then getting those powers is coming up with a logical reason why those things or make those work together. It's really kind of a mind exercise to be able to get it all to work together. So it's kind of fun. I actually do that every once in a while now. I'll just roll up a random character and try to make him work or her work.
Well,
yeah, because you never know what the next one you roll could be the one.
Right. It could tie everything together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
could be the next Superman.
Could be.
Think about the odds of what, if you want to go back, you think about Red Sonja as a character. Originally, she was during the Buccaneer area. She carried pistols and stuff. But she didn't catch on until she became the Barbarian, and the chainmail bikini and the warrior that she became. So that's what I was talking about, that as long as these characters keep evolving and changing with the times, you will eventually find, I think they call that the protois, or the protoform of a character, is when they're one thing and then they keep changing until where they find out exactly what they want them to be, and then it takes off running.
Right.
And you should never be afraid of changing something to make it better.
Right.
But don't lose what it is that you loved about the character to begin with. The core. Red Sonja is who she was all along. The format and how she dressed and things like that changed, but she is still what's famous today. We got a brand new Red Sonja movie coming out. I hope it's good.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that universe return back to, cinema.
Since the last Conan movie wasn't so much.
They shouldn't have done a remake. They should have gone back to the original source material, introduced him in Hyboria, and then him leaving in the Frost Giant story. Everybody wants to see the Frost Giant's daughter's story, where Conan meets the female Frost Giant who is in human form, and her brothers are trying to take her home, and Conan thinks they're attacking her, and he has to defend him. I want to see you build up Conan from his youth to become the barbarian we know, and then you run with it.
Right.
But give us something we haven't done. I don't want to see Dr. Doom again fighting the Fantastic Four.
Right.
Give me a Nihilist. Give me anybody else. I don't want to see another origin film. I know how Spider-Man got his powers. If you don't, then you've been under a rock forever. We know Superman's the last son of Krypton. You don't need to do a whole film around it.
Really, Bruce Wayne's parents were killed.
Yes. Be creative. Give an audience something that's gonna spark their enthusiasm, instead of the same, like you said, it's repetitive, same old, and that's what's happening in comics.
Wasn't there a Conan type or based game, RPG?
There was a Conan game, yeah.
I remember that was one of the ones.
I still have the pages as Conan Belit. Valeria has the big Norse guy. Remember the redhead guy he was friends with for a while, that then became one of his friends when he was king. And I think he appeared in the not Red Nails. That wasn't it. The one where Zenobia gets kidnapped in the Rose Petals, and I can't think of the name of it. And Conan leaves the kingdom to Khan and goes to find her. It's the last Conan book ever written by Howard. I can't remember the title of it. Now, and you know what's sad? You get a character that is perfect for the role. Like Brandon Roth was a perfect Superman. He was just never given a chance. Kevin Spacey could have been phenomenal as his own Lex Luthor. Why you would try to pigeonhole him into Gene Hackman's character, I don't know. Who else can you think of that? The guy who played Conan. What is his name?
Was that Jason Lee?
Jason
What?
Lee.
Was it
Yeah.
Jason Lee?
No,
It was Momoa.
Momoa. Let him have done his own story. You know, he would have been a perfect Conan because he had the build, the acting, you know, the chops. It was the story that let him down.
Right. Which is most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
It's the story that always breaks the successful stuff.
Well, it's the story, and it's the director who wants to put their stamp and make it their version of the character. Nobody wants to see your version of the character. I didn't want to see Schumacher's version of Batman.
No.
If I want to see that, I'd go back and watch the 60s Batmans because that's what he was ripping off.
Yeah, minus the nipples.
Minus the nipples, yep. That's one of my top-ranked worst bat suits ever. I mean, when you need a codpiece and fake nipples, you're compensating.
I think those nipples are keeping him at the gates of heaven a little longer than he was thinking. And he made such a big deal about it when he was talking about behind the scenes and stuff in the promotion. Oh yeah, I gave you the big smooth butts and I put nipples on the bat suits, and people are like, why?
And the gratuitous butt shot.
You want to just get up there and smack that ham, kabam!
And see, that was the problem. We went from one extreme to the other. We went from too lighthearted to too dark and brooding. Where I think Batman works best somewhere in the center. You know, as a character's talking about characters and stuff, when you take a character, whether role-playing or whatever, and you act out against what the character is, like if you're taking a formed character or an IP, like say you're playing Captain America, but you play him like Wolverine, it doesn't work. So when you're doing that with Batman and everybody wants Batman to be a dark killer, well, then he's no different than what he's trying to stop.
Right.
So he has to have a boundary that he'll never cross, or then he loses his status as a hero.
He loses what makes him him.
Yes. Same way with Superman. Superman is something that all the other heroes look up to and aspire to be like. He was self-sacrificing, That's why I loved elements of Man of Steel, but when he let his dad die, and his dad's like, don't do it. Shut up, Kevin Costner, let him save you. I was like, that's not Superman. And whoever wrote this,
best anyone on the planet, they could literally just save him and put him over there, and they wouldn't even know. What was that wind?
Yeah, he could have been gone and back before anybody even noticed what had happened. Yep. And then, like, why take and make Pa Kent this coward of a character who was so afraid for his son that he wouldn't let him do anything, when Pa Kent fought in World War II and originally he was a hero. He knew what sacrifice was, and the reason why Superman became who he was because he was the environment he grew up in.
Yes.
So to remove all of that and you make this brooding character, and you know what's funny? They think it's new, but we remember the novel that came out, which was The Last Son of Krypton, which played Superman as Jesus.
Yeah, okay.
And it came out years before Man of Steel, so they'd already played around with that story. And yes, Mr. Snyder, you thought you were creating something new, but it wasn't. It had already been tried. Right. Oh man, I don't want this to become a gripe session, so I'm going to stop.
Well, so I'm gonna ask one last question, and we'll do a little round of that, and then we'll end the podcast. So we can always continue another topic next time. So yeah, I guess we'll bring it back to and trying to think of what I want us to ask, but yeah, something about it.
Ask not for whom the bell tolls. It ain't me. That was funny. That was funny. Laugh,
Yeah,
Mark.
funny.
Oh, I was making my own joke that you're not far off.
Just it has an alternate ending. It is you.
So
Corona in your hand.
Okay, man.
if we could set up a game
Okay.
right now, like not tonight, but in the near future to play us four, what would y'all want to play?
I'm gonna let Colin go first.
I probably would start with something with Marvel and just dig out my old characters.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's what I was doing.
That's where we were.
I wish you hadn't asked me that question. My mind went in about 1,000 different directions.
well, we talked about this, about possibly us doing a game and then recording it, like just like this.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's one thing we've talked about is doing a live Zoom gaming session, just so people could see what it's like. And I think the first one should be practice, just in
yeah.
case.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Get us back in the groove. Yeah. Absolutely. And just keep it for outtakes.
I can't read the instructions. I think it says roll a D2. There's no D2. What do you mean there's no D2? Oh.
I would have to go get dice.
You know what?
I'd have to go down to Syracuse, one of the game stores, and get dice.
There are digital
My
dice.
whole bag of dice disappeared.
There are digital dice apps that you can
No.
get. You don't, but it's not the same as a
It's
tag
not
house.
the
roll.
same.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No.
You know what's funny? You remember that giant Crown Roll bag I had that was full of dice?
I had
My
one too because
grand-
you got me going on it.
My grandchildren have whittled that down, and I don't know what they do with them, but I just know that they've been taking them because every now and then I'll find one of them in one of their rooms when I go visit, and it's just like the little take a coin out of the coin purse. I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
And there's like maybe 8 dice in this bag now, and it just sits on my shelf, and I'm like, what were they thinking? He'll never notice.
Just one more. He won't notice. It's fine.
Meanwhile, they're building an epic collection of dice. Hey, I'm ready to play.
All right.
No, if we were gonna do that, I would definitely be like, okay, I need a little time to go get everything I need. But I would be all for it, and then I would probably want to go with Marvel.
Okay.
Or at least use that as the base system again.
I think the Marvel probably be the best. I mean, because that's the system we know, and you know, since we've shared so much love for it in this episode, we might as well.
Marvel needs to cut us a check.
Lots of advertising going on today.
Continue.
Bring
But,
back Marvel campaigns.
Kevin Feige.
Call me.
I've got some ideas.
Ideas.
Got an idea for arcade.
Yeah. So
It's in my head, Charles.
yeah, we'll play by ear, figure it out, and then set it up and we'll go from there. But,
One thing that we had talked about was recreating the characters that we would play as if they were actual
yes.
in the Threat universe, in the Stratum universe,
Okay.
and then just build a world around that and play that way.
Yeah, we could.
I'd
You
be
know
open
what?
to trying that.
I got one. What if we took our old characters, which we should all have the paperwork for, and suddenly there's a time warp or a displacement, and those old characters end up in the Threat universe and end up confronting ourselves.
Well, for you guys, that would work, but none of my stuff is really in there. So.
No, but you could be there are characters that could fit in there that could be the wild cards. You know?
I'm not opposed to trying something new with Vandalier.
I think that would be really fun.
I have no problem with trying, because that's what that character was always about, just growth and development and, frequent change. So taking the aesthetic and the existing setup for the threat and applying that to Bandolier would be a nice challenge for me, I think.
Yeah.
I would be absolutely willing to try.
I think it would be fun for us to try to have to get back into the mindset of the old characters and the new ones. Because one of the things I really loved back in the day was playing multiple characters and going in and out of characters and trying to maintain that character when you're him. And I remember one time I was having an argument with 3 characters I was playing with myself as each character, and I looked around the table and everybody was like looking at me, and one kid was like, "That's awesome. You know, that was wild. How do you do that?" And somebody said, "My dad's crazy, or he's got split personalities, so it's easy for him." And I was like, I gotta go with that. But I would like to see us do that. Can we go back to those characters and remember where we were when we created them in our mindset, and then play them opposite of who we are now, who our characters are now? Because our characters are us. They're parts and elements of us. That would be an interesting game. That's just me. You asked what would be.
No, I like that. I mean, that's it ties into the current idea of what's going out there with multiverses and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
true.
could very well be a thing. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, the one thing we promised ourselves: no aliens and no gods.
Right.
And no magic.
And no magic. Yeah. Because we just couldn't believe that it would they would fit, because we wanted to try to base it in some kind of reality. But you know, Marvel fixed us with that. Magic is just math.
Yeah. Science.
That's true.
Science.
Yeah. Science.
Yeah, Vince, we can figure out some time to work on those characters and get them all set up for the new version. I think you've got all the characters, the old versions. I think you've got my old versions of Enigma.
Yeah, I gotta go look, because I've got.
I'll have to go back.
I got boxes of Tupperware in my closet that is going to have to be moved out to get to the bottom where that stuff is. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate
I know I've got a lot of my original stuff tucked away. I think all my gaming stuff is together, so it's just be a matter of me finding it.
And I'd like to add one more thing before we go. I know that you might end up editing some of the things out to shorten it for time, but music and the creative process. I love playing an album or music in the background while I was creating the characters or their story, because the music would just get those juices flowing, and
creating soundtracks to the
characters, which is what you do now with your work with soundtracks and stuff, which was an extension of the things that you were doing back then. I mean, I think that's fantastic. And music of our time was so important to the things that we did back then.
Absolutely.
Yep.
When we gamed, you always had the stereo going, and you would find a station that played a good variety of music, and we just let it go. And it wasn't very loud. It was just enough to where we could hear it and feel the vibe of it.
Or I played a movie soundtrack album. I did that sometimes. But yeah, I mean, you can't think about the role playing without thinking about all the things that added to it.
Right. You know, every little nuance
was there. Yeah, it's just like when you walk into a comic store. It's not about just going in and buying a comic. It was about the smell. It was about the tactile feel of reading the book, listening to the sounds, just like going into an arcade. That sound, every arcade had that same sound, that music, the do-do-do-do of the games playing, and the ching-ching-ching going in the background, and I miss that, because the ambiance was just everything. And that's the same way with a good comic shop. It had a certain smell. The people you knew.
It was its own presence. It was its own entity.
And the people who were selling the books read the books.
Yes.
They didn't know the artist, or they didn't know who the writer was sometimes. They tell you the stories. that the books contain. When I had my shop in Clear Lake, in
El Dorado.
El Dorado, one of the things I loved was when kids came in and they were like new to X-Men or new to Spider-Man, and all they knew were the cartoon characters, and I watched those shows and could associate with them on that, and I go, well, come here and let me show you something. This is where that came from. This is the story arc. Here are the books, and get them. And then one thing we didn't do, we did have some high priced books, but they were generally on the wall or in the bathroom.
Yeah.
The books that were out were so people could pick them up and buy them without emptying their pockets. We tried to be reasonably priced.
Which is what we did at nights.
And then when they bought it, they'd come back and go, "Oh, this was great. What else?" And all of a sudden, that's the next generation of comic collector. That's somebody who's going to go on and help keep this great thing we love going.
It created that spark.
Yeah. And that is truly what I loved about comic shops. And if I ever were to do that again, it would have to be the core of it for me. Because it was, cards, gaming, collectibles. That's all part of it. But to be honest, we're here because we love comics. We love comic stories. We like stories. We like, all of that.
And everything, the gaming, all of it, the kinship, I guess, would be the brotherly factor, I guess, would be whatever. I'm trying to find the right word, but that all stemmed from comics. Yeah. Everything, all these stories we've told stemmed from one place, and that was the comic.
Yep. It was what united all of us. I mean, all of our friends, all the people we hung out with were, not the same people. We all had different likes. We like different music. We like different movies. We like to do different things, but we found one common thing in all different ages. Yeah. Look at me, Ray was 10 years my senior. I'm 10 years Mark's, and
squirrel in between, and then we got Billy and Ember, who were the next generation of it.
And Logan. Logan's in the manga. He loves comics. He's drawing. Everything is there. Now my granddaughter, Alice, she's into it, and Edward's getting into it. My greatest moment was when my grandson was having a fit in a living room. He was in his little bouncy thing. He didn't want to cooperate. He was angry, just and they flipped through the channels to find him something to watch, and Godzilla appeared on the screen. And he went, and his dad goes, "Oh, hell no." Ran over, grabbed the phone, and changed the channel. And he just went nuts again. He flipped it back and he goes, and he turned to me, gave me this dirty look. He gave Ember a dirty look, and he walked off in the other room. And I was like, it's genetics. I'm sorry.
Oh, and then Edward the same way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Godzilla is just, that's genetic. The love for Godzilla is just genetic, and it's generational.
Yeah.
My kids do sit down and watch Godzilla stuff.
And after
I have it all on my server computer, and that's it.
After watching Edward try to build his own Godzilla outfit out of cardboard, I'm like, I think we can do something with that.
I saw that. That was great.
So,
that was great. And I tell you what, I am looking forward to meeting those kids someday.
Oh, they know about you. Unfortunately, they've heard too many of our stories.
Yeah. The crazy uncle and the great white horse.
Yep.
Who drank V8.
I'm so glad that not one of you mentioned I look like Santa Claus.
No. Mark called you Fat Man early on.
Yeah. I wish I was Fat Man. That was an awesome movie.
Mel
Gibson as Santa Claus was awesome. I was like, yeah, that's the Santa Claus we need for a new generation. Well, Mark's not saying a word. Are you lost over there?
No, Muhammad Joe's enjoying the sun.
Sorry, I was looking at Aaron.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah. All right.
Aaron floating in the sky like a little white cloud. I'm looking at Aaron.
And that's
So,
Anyways,
yeah, let's all right, so everyone, I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Please, if you have memories or anything like that, comment below. Let us know what your favorite games were and your favorite memories of gaming.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
Please. And remember, I'm John.
I'm Bill.
I'm Bartholomew.
Come on, Roscoe, say your name. Good night,
Don't mind
everybody.
him. Don't mind him down in the corner. He's deaf mute. He's good.